Hello, brothers, and welcome to Sigma Old Man Channel. The mind despises blank pages, so it writes its own love story, whether the hero agrees to the plot or not. Here's a brain twister. Psychologists have shown that when we know less about someone, we actually rate them more attractive. Ambiguous online profiles scored up to 30% higher in likability than detailed ones in lab experiments nicknamed the less is more effect. Translation: mystery isn't just sexy, it's rocket fuel for projection. Now add a Sigma male to that equation. He drops fewer personal details than a CIA memo and boom, the collective imagination goes full Pixar. Is he a secret poet? A midnight vigilante? Both? The fewer facts he offers, the faster people paint him in 4K, Dolby Atmos extended director's cut. Women especially treat his silence like a choose-your-own adventure. Every smirk becomes a subplot. Every maybe sounds like a marriage proposal whispered by fate. Stick around as we pry open this human Rorschach test. We'll unpack why your brain insists on upgrading his resume, how your fantasies say more about you than him, and why the quietest guy in the room keeps renting space in your head. No lease, no apology, and absolutely no loyalty card points. Buckle up. Reality's about to photobomb your daydreams with a wink and a punchline. Number 1. He may say one sentence, but you'll remember it for weeks. Like a well-aimed scalpel, his sentences cut straight to the nerve you pretended didn't exist. He doesn't chatter, he calibrates. While everyone else scatters conversational confetti, compliments, gossip, weather reports, he waits, watches, then drops one line that feels hand-stitched to your private insecurities. The room stays noisy, yet inside your skull a siren goes off. How did he know? You replay his words in the shower, during traffic, in that lull before sleep, trying to decide whether they belong in the compliment or critique folder. Spoiler, they occupy both. And that twin effect keeps them looping like a hook you never asked to like until sleep finally drags you under. Part of the magic is his economy. 2 or 3 sentences max. No decorative frosting, no emoji energy. Every syllable earns rent. Because he's allergic to pointless fluff, his speech feels expensive, like opening a rare bottle of whiskey and discovering it doubles as truth serum. Friends say he hardly talks, forgetting that brevity is a strategic choice. He isn't shy, he's selective. He knows impact is inversely proportional to word count, the same way espresso hits harder than diner coffee. There's humor woven in, a sly grin between the lines. He'll lob a quiet joke with surgical precision, so dry you don't laugh until 5 minutes later, when the delayed punchline detonates mid-thought and makes you look like a lunatic giggling alone. That latency rewires your dopamine schedule, turning his presence into a subscription service you never unsubscribe from. And yes, it's unsettling. His words echo because they expose blind spots you thought were well camouflaged. Yet you keep coming back, like rewatching a thriller to catch clues you missed. He isn't manipulative, he's just uncomfortably accurate, and accuracy breeds obsession. By the time you realize the conversation changed you, he's already moved on, leaving behind an aftertaste equal parts inspiration and ouch. Amid a world drowning in content, his voice is a sniper round, one shot, one recalibrated worldview. Days later you quote him in a meeting, claim the wisdom as yours, then feel guilt because you know who actually loaded that chamber all along anyway. That ballistics test repeats daily every time you cross paths. A reminder that language in the right hands isn't conversation. It's precision engineering for the soul. Number 2, people question their own worth around him, but still want to be near. He walks into a room like a living reference point, an unspoken benchmark against which everyone's inner tape measure suddenly flicks out. No arrogance, no stink of superiority, just a steady calm that whispers, I know what I stand for, do you? People feel it in their marrow. They straighten spines, second-guess punchlines, and edit half their sentences before they reach their lips. It isn't fear of being judged, it's awareness of their own slack edges rubbing against his clean lines. Strangely, that internal friction doesn't repel, it magnetizes. His presence functions like a brutally honest mirror in perfect lighting, unflattering, sure, but impossible to walk away from because it hints at the sharper version of you hiding under comfort zone lint. He won't say a word about your late projects or the way you settle for half-baked dreams, yet you swear he's holding a silent clipboard. That's the trick. He imposes nothing, so any pressure you feel is entirely self-generated, and self-generated pressure sticks. When he nods at something you said, it feels like a Michelin star. When he stays quiet, you replay the silence like an audio file, decoding what improvement it's nudging you toward. His standards don't shame, they dare. It's the difference between someone yelling, "Get better," and someone calmly embodying better until you're itchy to level up, just to keep conversational pace. Humor sneaks in too, the way caffeine hides in chocolate. He might raise an eyebrow and quip "bold strategy" when you outline a plan held together by duct tape and optimism. You laugh, but the subtext files itself under "must revise blueprint." Hours later, you're rewiring the plan, thanking him in absentia for a joke that doubled as a roadmap. That's why people hover. They're addicted to the upgrade loop. Near him, self-worth isn't drained, it's recalibrated, like tuning a guitar beside a pitch-perfect ear. Every encounter feels mildly exhausting, yet deeply nutritious, the social equivalent of leg day. You limp out, sore, but eager for the next session because you know the gains are coming. And so you stay within orbit, voluntarily roasting in the silent heat of his expectations, until the version of you that once cringed now nods back with equal steadiness. Number 3, he's never in the drama, but always in the aftermath. Chaos treats him like a confessional booth. It rages at everyone else, then shows up at his door holding half-burned receipts and asking for absolution. He wasn't even in the group chat when the meltdown began. You can check the timestamps. But somehow every shaken participant ends up orbiting his calm like moths that finally spotted a porch light. They know he won't rubberneck or gossip. He'll just absorb the detonation residue, separate emotion from evidence, and hand them back a cleaned-up timeline plus homework on how not to blow themselves up next time. He's basically emotional NATO, minus the press conferences. Part of the pull is his refusal to pick up pitchforks. While the room is choosing sides and sharpening tweets, he's nursing coffee, running cost-benefit analyses in his head, and waiting for the smoke to settle. That neutrality is intoxicating because it promises safe harbor without promising agreement. People sense they won't get co-signed on their victim narrative, they'll get audited. Yet they line up anyway, craving the moment he says, "All right, walk me through it," in that flat tone that feels less like therapy and more like quality control for feelings. And yes, they leave lighter, sometimes annoyed by how quickly he spotted the real fuse. You're not mad at her, you're mad you ignored 3 red flags and now you owe yourself an apology. Brutal, absolutely. But the truth drops like cold water on a hangover, and clarity is an addictive high. Next crisis, they seek the same hit. He's not a drama magnet, he's a detox spa for messy choices, and word of mouth is relentless. Humor sneaks in through the gaps, dry, blink-and-you-miss-it lines that pop tension like bubble wrap. He'll glance at the scorched earth group chat and murmur, "Well, congratulations, you achieved full transparency, along with partial incineration." Everybody groans, laughs, and without noticing, relaxes enough to think straight again. That micro-joke rewires the room faster than any pep talk. The result? Emotional influence bordering on gravitational law. He never auditions for the role, people cast him anyway. They might complain that he's detached, but they cling to that detachment like a life raft, because deep down they realize drama needs distance to be dissected. And he, silent, surgical, unflappable, is the only one brave enough to stand that far back and still care. Number 4, he has no need to impress, but still outshines. He strolls into the venue like it's Tuesday at the post office. No spotlight, no anthem, just presence. Meanwhile, the resident peacock is broadcasting himself with the subtlety of a discount fireworks booth. Loud jacket, louder laugh, and enough cologne to embalm the front row. Yet somehow, attention tilts. Phones go dark, chit-chat lags, and you can almost hear an internal group sigh. Why does that guy suddenly feel optional? Here's the deal. A Sigma's baseline is self-containment. He's not allergic to approval, he's just already full. That inner equilibrium burns brighter than any neon suit because it's rare currency, scarce and inflation-proof. People sense it, even if they can't name it. They look at the human megaphone doing cartwheels and wonder why all that theatrical sweat feels desperate. Next to him, the Sigma's composure reads like a luxury good. No labels, premium craftsmanship, zero advertising. He does none of the usual courtship karaoke, no exaggerated handshakes, no TikTok-ready smiles, and still wins the room's ROI calculator. Investors do this math instinctively. Who will be valuable when the novelty dust settles? The Sigma's calm whispers, durable, flashes antics scream, markdown soon, so attention reallocates not by applause but by gravitational drift. Humor leaks out in quick little jabs. The peacock brags about his limited edition sneakers. The Sigma murmurs, limited editions are nature's way of admitting they got it wrong the first time. It lands softly, like a wink in Morse code, yet half the group files it under reasons to re-evaluate my spending. Even the peacock blinks, suddenly aware that applause is thinning. And while everyone's secretly moving their chips over to his corner, he's busy judging the espresso quality. That obliviousness, catnip. It reminds people of childhood crushes on teachers who didn't know they were idolized, safe, thrilling, unattainable. They start checking their posture, trimming verbal fluff, and wondering how to earn a nod from someone who isn't dishing them out like candy. By the time the flashiest guy realizes the oxygen has shifted, it's too late. The Sigma didn't steal the show. He quietly made the idea of a show seem childish. And that right there is how you outshine without ever flipping on a single light. Number 5, he looks better the less you know him. He's the only man who grows taller the longer you stare. At first glance, he's cool water in a clear glass, refreshing but ordinary. 2 conversations in, you realize the glass sits above a bottomless well. Layer after layer, it dawns on you that what felt like enough depth to swim in was just the entry hatch. Small talk dies around him because it understands it won't survive. He asks one question, and you're unspooling memories from 3 relocations ago, shocked at how fast the room transforms into a vault where secrets go to stretch their legs. Then he switches lanes, drops a line about quantum tunneling or 1970s Nigerian high-life guitar riffs, and your brain glitches. How do those topics live inside the same skull? Answer. His interior is the size of several postcodes stitched together. Here's the twist. Every revelation contradicts the mental file you made 5 minutes earlier. You thought he was stoic until he laughed so hard he nearly spilled espresso over a joke nobody else caught. You pegged him as academic until he rewired a broken amplifier in silence because music couldn't wait for a repair shop. Frameworks keep failing, so you throw them away and follow curiosity instead. That's when you realize you've crossed a line. You're no longer learning about him, you're orbiting. Your friends notice. They tease you for bringing his name into conversations he's not even part of. We get it, he's fascinating, they say, half mocking, half curious, because second-hand stories don't do the trick. They want first contact, and that's the paradox. The closer they get, the hungrier they become. Every new detail is a breadcrumb that extends the trail rather than finishing it. He never weaponizes this depth, that would cheapen it. He simply exists, and existing at that altitude warps gravity. People who have known him for years still hit moments of, wait, you can do that too? It's unsettling in the addictive sense, like realizing the series you're binge-watching has hidden seasons nobody advertised. By the time you admit you'll never reach the end of him, you've already accepted that unfinished can be a destination. You stop trying to label the storm. You learn to read its pressure systems instead, and just like that, routine skies feel embarrassingly flat. Number 6. People copy him without liking him. There's a strange kind of tension that follows him around, the kind that makes people imitate him before they even realize it, and resent him for it afterward. He never tries to be a trendsetter, never raises his hand and says, "This is the way." He just does what he does in that crisp, calculated manner that says, "I've thought about this deeply." And that quiet conviction, it's louder than any influencer's megaphone. Suddenly, colleagues start dressing more like him, subtly. They adjust their tone to match his low-tempo confidence. They steal his minimalist swagger while trying to convince themselves it was their idea. Here's the kicker. Most of these people don't even like him. They find him cold, detached, too intense. And yet, they still rearrange parts of themselves to match his energy. That's not charm, it's raw gravitational force. He doesn't chase attention. Attention gets confused and chases him, unsure whether it wants to praise him or compete with him. But either way it follows. This is what makes him dangerous in the most fascinating way. He's not trying to be an alpha. He's not interested in running the pack. He's the blueprint others quietly study when the lights are off and no one's watching. The same people who throw shade during meetings are taking notes on how he handled the client call. The same friends who say he's a bit much are standing in front of the mirror trying to nail the same disinterested stare that somehow makes everyone listen when he speaks. They borrow his words, his style, his stillness, because it works. But it also reminds them what they're not, self-possessed. While they hustle for approval, he walks like someone who doesn't need the crowd to clap. That rattles people. It creates a quiet envy that festers under the surface. all while they continue copying him like he's a silent syllabus for personal evolution. He's not magnetic because he tries to be. It's because he couldn't care less. That indifference, that internal sovereignty, is more contagious than any curated charisma. It doesn't build followers, it builds replicas. And the unsettling part, even his critics keep trying to become the very thing they can't quite stand. Number 7, he's the guy everyone consults, but no one includes. He's the guy whose number they dial when the situation gets too complex for groupthink. When strategy goes sideways, when emotions cloud logic, when the room needs clarity instead of applause, they reach for him. Not because he's charismatic or comforting or good vibes, but because he's right. Consistently, effortlessly, brutally. He's the one they trust to cut through nonsense with surgical accuracy. Yet, when it's time for office drinks, birthday dinners, or random brunches, his name somehow disappears from the guest list. And no, it's not because he's antisocial, he just makes people confront too much of themselves. Why? Because being around him feels like sitting next to an emotional audit. He never criticizes, never rolls his eyes, never even hints at superiority. But his presence alone makes people more aware of their shortcuts, their insecurities, their performative tendencies. While everyone else is peacocking for attention or drama dancing for relevance, he's watching with that calm, unreadable expression that says, "I see through this, and I'm not impressed." Not out loud, just with a glance. And that's more unnerving than open judgment. So people create distance, not out of malice, but out of psychological self-preservation. He doesn't make them feel excluded, they just don't feel as together around him. His competence highlights their chaos, his self-respect exposes their craving for validation. His emotional neutrality reveals just how reactive they are. That kind of mirror isn't flattering at a party. Still, they crave his input like addicts. When their flashy friend with all the jokes crashes and burns, when the confident leader makes a mess behind the scenes, guess who they text? "Hey, I know you're probably busy, but can I get your take?" They know he won't sugarcoat it, won't exploit their vulnerability, won't share the screenshots. And that rare emotional safety makes him priceless, even if they keep him locked in the cabinet and only take him out when the grown-up decisions need to be made. He's not the guy people invite to fit in. He's the one they call when fitting in has backfired. And someone needs to fix what the cool crowd couldn't. And that makes him unforgettable, even if most don't have the spine to sit beside him long term. Number 8, women apologize for oversharing after feeling too safe with him. There's something disarming about him that no one can quite articulate, but everyone feels. He doesn't nudge, doesn't probe, doesn't bait people with, "So, tell me more." He just listens, really listens, with that kind of focused stillness that makes you forget time exists. No fake nodding, no waiting for his turn to speak. Just quiet attention that feels like emotional gravity. And somehow, before they know it, women, strong, guarded, emotionally private women, find themselves spilling confessions they've never said out loud. Childhood fears, hidden regrets, messy breakups, the dreams they've shelved, boom, all out there like a verbal purge they didn't even plan. And when the emotional dust settles and they realize how much they shared with someone they barely know, they panic. Cue the inevitable text. "I don't know why I told you all that. I never talk to people like this. Sorry if I said too much." But he's already moved on. Not because he doesn't care, but because he doesn't dramatize what others would sensationalize. He simply absorbs, stores nothing for leverage, and goes on living like he didn't just become someone's unexpected therapist. That kind of emotional safety. It's crack-level addictive. It's rare. Most people either listen to fix, listen to interrupt, or listen to use later as ammo. He does none of that, and the strangest part? He didn't try to create that space, it's just who he is. Someone whose quiet presence feels more stable than most people's rehearsed empathy. That safety makes him unforgettable. Women remember him not because he gave great advice or flirted like a pro, but because for once they felt fully seen without being judged, analyzed, or pitied. There's no ego in how he holds space for people, no hidden motive, and that makes them want to tell him more, not less. It's the paradox of the Sigma male. His detachment doesn't push people away, it lures them in. He may not know your dog's name or follow you on Instagram, but you'd still trust him with your most fragile truths. Why? Because you didn't hand them over, your soul did. And now you're thinking about that conversation 3 days later, wondering why a man who barely talks made you feel more emotionally safe than the ones who never shut up. Number 9, alphas avoid locking horns with him. Alpha males are used to being the loudest frequency in any room. They posture, puff their chests, dominate conversations with charm or volume, and expect others to follow their rhythm or get drowned out by it. But when a Sigma male enters the scene, that rhythm stutters. Suddenly, the self-declared leader becomes aware of a presence that doesn't compete for the spotlight, yet somehow steals its voltage. And that's deeply unsettling. It's not respect that quiets the alpha, it's caution. Because Sigmas don't bark, they calculate. They don't flex, they observe. They don't go head-to-head unless the win is already mathematically inevitable. The alpha knows he's dealing with someone who doesn't care about hierarchy, validation, or status games. He's dealing with someone who will dismantle him, not with confrontation, but with strategy. And there's nothing more terrifying to a man who thrives on dominance than a man who thrives on not caring who's dominant. What the alpha senses, but can't explain, is that the Sigma operates like a chess player in a room full of checkers enthusiasts. He's always thinking 10 moves ahead, and if provoked, he won't shout back. He'll simply find the quietest, most efficient way to make you irrelevant. That could be exposing your ego with one sentence, or pointing out the flaw in your logic so smoothly it leaves no room for rebuttal, or worse, ignoring your aggression altogether until it deflates under its own stupidity. So the alpha recalibrates. He becomes unusually respectful, less bark, more strategic friendliness, maybe even nervous jokes and excessive politeness. It's not flattery, it's self-preservation. Deep down, the alpha knows that a Sigma is the one man who can shake the illusion of dominance without ever raising his voice or lifting a finger. That's not intimidation, that's precision power. The irony? The Sigma isn't even paying attention to this unspoken power dance. He doesn't see the alpha as a rival because he doesn't see anyone as competition. He's too busy minding his business, crafting his inner world, executing silent plans. But in doing so, he forces the room to bend around him, not by force, but by sheer gravitational presence. And for an alpha used to being the center of attention, nothing is more disarming than realizing the real threat is the one man who couldn't care less about being noticed. Number 10, he makes people nervous by doing nothing. He doesn't walk in like he owns the room, he walks in like he doesn't need to. And that hits harder than any grand entrance. No forced smiles, no loud greetings, no scanning the room to gauge status. Just calm steps and unreadable expression and stillness that says, I'm not here for validation. I'm here because I choose to be. And somehow that rattles people more than the loudest alpha in the room. You can feel the shift. Conversations get weirdly polite. Laughter gets a bit too loud or a little too forced. People start fixing their hair or adjusting their clothes, unsure why they suddenly feel seen even though he hasn't looked at them twice. That's because his presence doesn't scream, it hums. A deep, quiet frequency that tells you this is someone who observes more than he speaks. And when he does speak, it won't be fluff. It'll be precision. He says nothing, and yet people start self-editing mid-sentence, questioning their own behaviors, wondering if they're being too much. His silence doesn't shame, it sharpens. It creates an atmosphere where people instinctively check their integrity, their posture, even their tone, not because he demands it, but because something about him makes mediocrity feel exposed. And the irony? He's not judging anyone, he's just fully present, fully detached, and fully indifferent to the games people play for attention. But that kind of indifference is a spotlight in itself. It forces everyone else to confront how much of their identity is performative. He's not trying to intimidate, but when you're around someone who's immune to approval, your own need for it starts to feel embarrassingly loud. Even the most confident people feel slightly off balance around him, not because he's cold or mean, but because his vibe says, I've figured something out you haven't. And let's be honest, that unspoken mystery, that quiet composure that feels like it knows your secrets before you've said a word, it's seductive in a way no pickup line or six-pack ever could be. So while others try harder to be seen, he does nothing and becomes unforgettable. Because true presence isn't about volume, it's about depth. And his depth makes people stand a little straighter, speak a little clearer, and wonder, what does he see that I don't? Number 11, He's effortlessly memeable. He's the kind of man people turn into content without his consent. One sentence from him becomes a screenshot, a tweet, a caption on a black and white photo with lo-fi music underneath. Not because he's trying to be deep, but because he is deep, in that maddening, minimalist way that makes people feel like they just heard something important without knowing why it hit so hard. He doesn't talk in Instagram-worthy quotes or viral punchlines. He says regular things, but with such grounded clarity they stick. "I don't react to nonsense" becomes a motto. "Not everything needs a response" ends up on Pinterest boards next to Japanese ink paintings. His entire existence becomes a template for people's aspirational selves, calm, distant, composed, mysterious, purposeful. And the wildest part? He's not curating anything. No filters, no angles, no performance. While everyone else is branding themselves like startup CEOs, posting, editing, tailoring captions to optimize attention, he's just living, wearing whatever he actually likes, saying what he means, leaving when he's bored. And somehow that raw authenticity becomes aesthetic gold. People start mimicking his clothing choices, copying his tone, even structuring their routines based on something they think he does. It's not admiration, it's subtle idolization. He doesn't need followers, but gets them anyway. Not the algorithm-chasing kind, the quiet lurkers who want to study his silence like it's a philosophy. Women repost quotes that sound like him. Men copy his walk, his playlists, his refusal to explain himself. And none of it is requested. He becomes the blueprint for the vibe they wish they could master, detached, calm, precise, while the world screams and stumbles. It's unintentional icon energy. He's not a brand, he's a glitch in the system, too real to market, too grounded to commodify. And that's what makes him memeable, not because he's chasing clout, but because in a world addicted to performance, his raw existence feels like a cure. People don't just want to look like him, they want to be him, even if they'll never admit it out loud. Number 12. Women compete for his attention in silence. He's the guy women find themselves orbiting without quite knowing why. He doesn't flirt, he doesn't chase. He doesn't even drop subtle cues that say, "I'm interested." And that's exactly why they get hooked. There's something maddeningly attractive about a man who doesn't play the game, because suddenly they're the ones strategizing. They start curating their presence around him without even realizing it. A slightly riskier dress when he's in the room, louder laughter when he walks by, carefully crafted Instagram stories with just enough mystery to catch his eye, posted with one audience in mind, him. He's not the loudest guy at the table, but when he looks up, the energy shifts. A single glance from him carries more weight than 10 compliments from anyone else. And that makes his attention feel rare, valuable, and oddly earned. But here's the twist. He doesn't notice any of it. Not because he's oblivious, but because he doesn't assign value to performance. He doesn't interpret that new outfit as bait. He's not decoding every giggle or double take. His mind's on something else entirely, ideas, observations, whatever book he just finished. To him, attraction isn't about effort, it's about resonance. And that indifference, it's a silent trigger. It leaves women in an unfamiliar spot, competing for someone who won't even enter the arena. They can't tell if he's uninterested or just untouchable. They analyze his texts, if they're lucky enough to get one. They reread conversations that were only 5 sentences long, searching for hidden meaning. Meanwhile, he's probably wondering why everyone keeps overthinking everything. And the real kicker? The more he doesn't play into it, the deeper they fall. Because in a world where men are predictable, too eager, or constantly performing masculinity like a stage act, here's a man who doesn't care to impress, but ends up being the one they all want. He's a mystery wrapped in composure, tied up in emotional detachment. And whether they admit it or not, that makes them want to win something he's not even offering. Not for the validation, but just to see if they could. So here's the kicker. Every wild backstory you paste onto him is really a sticky note on your own forehead. His silence just hands you the glue. Keep fantasizing and he remains a mirage, untouchable, shape-shifting, endlessly fascinating. Strip away the projections and you'll find a man who never auditioned for your film, never signed off on your script, and still walks off with the box office numbers. That's the genius of his low-definition profile. It forces everyone else to reveal their high-definition hopes, insecurities, and half-finished selves. Want the spell to break? Start telling the truth, your truth, not his imaginary one. The moment you replace speculation with conversation, the fog clears, the myth evaporates, and you're face to face with a human who's neither secret vigilante nor tortured poet, just a guy who's mastered the art of keeping his own counsel. Then the spotlight swings back where it belongs, on you, deciding whether to keep projecting cartoons or step into something real. Either way, he'll be perfectly fine. Legends can take the night off. Authenticity is still open for business. Choose wisely, because the only story that sticks is the one you dare to write about yourself. If this pulled back the curtain on a few fantasies you didn't realize you were starring in, don't worry, we're just getting started. If you found yourself thinking, okay, that's a little too accurate, then you're exactly where you're meant to be. So go ahead. Subscribe to the channel if you're into content that doesn't just scratch the surface, but slices straight through it. Like the video if it made you laugh, reflect, or side-eye your own daydreams. Drop a comment and tell us which part hit hardest, or which projection you're officially retiring. And if you've got a friend who's currently in love with a man she barely knows, share this with her. She needs it, badly. We've got more truth, insight, and surgical storytelling coming your way, so stay close, because here we don't just decode behavior, we expose the blueprint underneath it. See you in the next one.